Welcome back to Faith Through the Ages. Today, we're diving into the fascinating life of John Calvin, a true giant of the Reformation.
Oh, John Calvin, I've been eager to learn more about him. You know, his impact is still felt today.
Absolutely. It's incredible how a man born in 1509 in a small French town like Noyon could shape so much of modern Christianity.
Right? And his early life was geared towards the Catholic clergy, wasn't it?
Yes. His parents were deeply religious. His father worked for the local Catholic Church, and they encouraged him to pursue a career in the clergy.
But then he switched to law, didn't he? What caused that shift?
Well, his father, thinking about financial security, redirected him to study law. So Calvin moved to Orléans and Bourges, excelling in logic and analysis.
Interesting how practical concerns can shape our paths.
Exactly.
So when did he start leaning towards Protestantism?
That's the fascinating part. In the 1530s, he had this profound spiritual transformation. He described it as sudden and unexpected.
A sudden shift? That must have been intense.
It was.
Do we know what influenced him?
He was heavily influenced by the writings of Martin Luther and the growing Protestant movement. It led him to abandon Catholicism entirely.
That was a bold move, especially in France at the time.
Exactly. He faced serious danger. In 1533, he had to flee Paris to avoid arrest and settled in Basel, Switzerland.
Basel? That's where he wrote his famous Institutes of the Christian Religion, isn't it?
Yes. First published in 1536, it was his magnum opus, a comprehensive guide to Protestant theology.
And it's still influential today. What made
Absolutely.
it stand out?
Well, it's like a blueprint for Reformed theology. He covered topics like salvation, the nature of God, and Christian living.
That's impressive. But I've heard he's also associated with predestination.
Yes, the doctrine of predestination was a key part of his teachings. The idea that God has already determined who will be saved.
That's a heavy concept. Did it cause
It is.
controversy?
Definitely. It sparked debates about free will versus God's sovereignty.
I can imagine. People like to think they have control over their fate.
Right.
How did Calvin defend his view?
He emphasized that predestination highlighted God's ultimate authority and grace rather than human effort.
Makes sense in that context. So tell me about his time in Geneva.
Oh, Geneva was pivotal. In 1536, he was invited to help establish a Reformed church there.
But didn't he face some opposition?
Yes, he did. Initially, conflicts with local leaders led to his expulsion. But he was invited back in 1541.
Really? And
Yeah.
what did he accomplish upon his return?
He transformed Geneva into a hub of Protestant reform, implementing strict moral laws and emphasizing discipline and education.
I've heard he banned activities like dancing and gambling.
That's right. He believed in a community that reflected Christian virtues.
Some might say that was a bit extreme.
Well-
Do you think it was necessary?
It's a tough call. It's like trying to create a city upon a hill, a model Christian society.
I see. But didn't his strict policies lead to controversies?
Yes, one of the most notable was the execution of Michael Servetus.
Servetus? Remind me who he was.
He was a theologian who challenged the doctrine of the Trinity. He was condemned as a heretic and executed in Geneva.
That's a dark chapter. Do you think that
It is.
tarnished Calvin's legacy?
In some ways, yes. It highlights the complexities of enforcing religious orthodoxy.
It's a reminder of how different the times were. Still, it's uncomfortable by today's standards.
Absolutely. But despite the controversies, his contributions to church governance were significant.
He advocated for a decentralized church structure, didn't he?
Yes. He rejected the hierarchical model of the Catholic Church, promoting leadership by elders and pastors. This influenced Presbyterianism and other traditions.
That's a lasting impact. And he focused on missionary work too?
He did. Under his guidance, Geneva became a training ground for Protestant missionaries spreading Reformed theology across Europe.
So he wasn't just thinking locally, but had a global vision.
Exactly. His emphasis on education also contributed to modern public schooling.
Really? In what way?
Yes, he believed everyone should be able to read the Bible, so literacy was crucial. This led to establishing schools.
That's a positive legacy. Education for all.
Definitely. And his ideas on governance and individual rights influenced democratic movements in later centuries.
It's amazing how his thoughts echoed through time.
It really is. Calvin died in 1564, but his influence endures.
Sounds like he was a complex figure, both inspiring and controversial.
That's a fair assessment.
Yeah,
Understanding him gives us insight into the complexities of the Reformation.
indeed. But do you think his strictness hindered or helped his cause?
That's a thoughtful question. I think his discipline helped solidify the community, but may have alienated some people.
Possibly. Balancing leadership and compassion is always challenging.
Absolutely. But regardless, his impact on theology and the church is undeniable.
Thanks for sharing all this. I feel like I have a much better understanding of John Calvin now.
Glad to hear that. It's been great discussing his life and legacy.
Definitely. Looking forward to our next deep dive into history.